live.
All right, very good. It is 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., and I will call this meeting to order. This is the July 28th meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. First of all, please give your attention to this short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you for that, Ms. Jahan. Could you go ahead and call attendance, please?
Sure. When you hear your name, please let me know you're present. You can either give me a wave or unmute yourself. Committee Member Ash. Committee Member Bristow. Committee Member Haley. Committee Member Hammond.
Here.
Thank you. Committee Member Hurley. Committee Member Carr.
Here.
Committee Member Leahy. Committee Member Linder.
Here.
Committee Member Bankert. William Bankert. Committee Member Moriarty.
Here.
Committee Member Powles.
Here.
Committee Member Vega. Committee Member Yao. Vice Chair Rosenberg.
Here.
Chair Miller.
Present. Thank you. Here.
Thank you. Please note that committee members Bristow, Hurley, Leahy, Bankert, and Vega and Yao are absent.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Jahan. It's a shame that Ms. Vega is not with us tonight, but that's fine. We'll still hear from folks. All right. So before we move on to public comment, I'd just like to let members of the public know that you can receive alerts about this or any other authority committee meeting by visiting ccta.net/subscribe or send an electronic request to info@ccta.net. Thank you. And with that, Ms. Jahan, have we received any public comment?
We have not, Chair Miller.
Written, I'm sorry, written public comment. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I checked an hour prior to the meeting and we did not receive any.
Okay, thank you for that. And is there any member of the public that is wishing to speak during our public comment? This would be on an item that is not on the agenda. So if you wish to make a public comment, on an item that's not part of the agenda, please raise your hand in Zoom and we will call on you. Do we see any hands up or any signals from the call-in line? Okay. All right. Very good. The next item on the agenda is the approval of just the consent calendar, summary of actions from the June 23rd meeting. Approval of the consent calendar will be to approve the summary of actions and acknowledge informational items, such as the member attendance log and upcoming meeting schedule. Are there any comments or changes from the committee on the minutes / summary of actions or from the attendance log? Does not appear that we do. All right. Is there anyone who wishes to make public comment on the consent items? All right. If there are no changes proposed, I would like to ask for a motion and a second to accept these items as entered into the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hammond.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Powles. Thank you very much, gentlemen. All right, roll call vote.
Okay, committee member Ash, how do you vote? Jared Ash. Committee member Haley, how do you vote?
Abstain?
I'm sorry, did you say abstain?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Committee member Hammond.
Approve.
Committee member Carr.
Aye.
Committee member Linder.
Aye.
Committee member Moriarty.
Abstain.
Committee member Powles.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rosenberg.
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
Motion passes by majority present.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
That was a close one.
Yeah, that one abstention almost sunk us. All right, we're going to move on to regular agenda items, but actually before we do, I'm not sure. I don't think we have. Do we have any do we have time later in the meeting to observe that we have new members, or is this the appropriate time to just make a quick observation there too?
Yeah, let's go ahead and introduce new members.
Yeah, Mr. Carr, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, happy to. I am your new representative on the committee from the town of Danville.
Welcome.
Lived about 5 years here and enjoy the opportunity to be a part of this committee and how it works. And so this is my first meeting, and let's carry on.
Excellent. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to have you here. And in addition, I got to say that what we saw the presentation by the city of Danville, either at our last meeting or the one before, and it was an incredibly, it was a really, really well done. There's a lot of moving and shaking there. You've got a great city government doing wonderful things for you guys. So glad to have you on board, Mr. Carr. I think our other new member is not in attendance tonight, if I'm correct. Yes. All right. Then we'll move on, and thank you very much, Mr. Carr. All right. So moving on to regular agenda items, we have a presentation tonight from BART, it appears. Matt, would you give us the lowdown?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Miller. So over the last several months, you've been asking us, and we've been trying to respond on reporting out on what various agencies, including CCTA and our partners, are doing to recover from the pandemic and when it comes to transportation. We talked to you about kind of what local conditions look like and how we're trying to manage, you know, what the freeways and arterials might look like as BART, as our, you know, primary transit provider in the county, as its ridership, you know, comes back. And we also talked about what the TDM, the Travel Demand Management folks are doing over at 511 Contra Costa. We talked about the travel behavior study that we did in the 680 corridor, where we talked about people, what their attitudes were towards transit. So now that we're getting down the line and offices are reopening and people are hopefully wanting to get back on transit, BART is responding. You probably heard in the news. So we thought it was appropriate to have them in here and maybe, you know, not wrap up the conversation, but at least, you know, put a nice bow on where things are at with the recovery. So we have Mike Eisman here from BART, but I also want to acknowledge that we have Kamala Parks and Ricky Wells. They are our Contra Costa liaisons, I'll call them. Everything we do with BART kind of goes through Kamala and Ricky, so they're really important for us. And Ricky is the chair of your sister committee, the Technical Coordinating Committee, which is made up of local city and agency staff. So yeah, so I wanted to introduce them, and I guess turn it over to Mike, or did anyone else want to speak? Ricky? Okay,
Thanks, Matt.
turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Matt. Mike Eisman here from BART. Really happy to be with you guys. Have a couple of small children nearby, so if things get loud, forgive me for that. So let's see. We have Ricky and I are actually going to talk through a few updates on what's going on with BART, and we'll just walk through some slides that we brought, and then pretty quickly, and then any questions you have, we'd certainly be happy to answer. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Having a little bit of a technical challenge doing that, actually.
Don't worry.
Forgive me for just a minute. All right, just one moment here. All right, let's try that. You guys seeing a PowerPoint slide there?
We're seeing yours, and I'm sure when you hit F5, I think it'll probably go into it. If not, you might need to hit the little button that switches screens on your laptop. Who knows?
Okay. Forgive me for the delay, folks. Seeing an unfamiliar screen here, but maybe we'll just, if it's all right, run through it in this format. Are you seeing mostly a PowerPoint slide here? Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
We'll just run with it. Okay. Just to get started here. So once again, Mike Eisman from BART, Financial Planning Director, work with Ricky in the performance and budget section of BART. We are, obviously, it's been an extraordinary 16 months here for everyone, but BART has had an extra extraordinary time, perhaps compared to even some other transit agencies in the region. So wanted to start with giving you a picture of how the last year has gone in terms of BART ridership. This is a bar chart here on the slide that just illustrates ridership on BART as a percentage of our roughly our pre-COVID level. And so you can see going from 100% in February of 2020, collapsing to just 6%. And we've been sort of under 13 or 14% of typical ridership, really for the whole first year of the pandemic. So most folks who relied on BART, a lot of folks have been staying home. So, we have continued to serve thousands of riders, all, principally essential workers, folks who relied on, who were particularly reliant on transit, didn't have access to a vehicle. A survey we did during the pandemic said, just about half of our riders during the pandemic had incomes of $50,000 or less for their household. So much lower income than before the pandemic for BART. More than half didn't have access to a vehicle. So, we're proud we were able to continue to provide essential service through the pandemic. Weekend ridership maintained somewhat higher levels than weekday ridership. You can see on the far right there, the graph over the last couple of months started to see an uptick in who's coming back to BART as the economy reopened somewhat. We're up in July here, we're approaching 90,000 riders a day. Recently, last couple of weeks, it's been in the sort of 22-23% range. So a slow recovery has begun. Got a little information here just to show you what the financial impact of that has been to BART. So prior to the pandemic, BART really relied on revenue from riders, contributions from riders in the form of fares and parking fees to cover about 2/3 of our operating expense. And we have a graphic here that shows kind of outlines where our revenue comes from over 4 years. And the top is kind of that breakdown for the pre-pandemic, the last full pre-pandemic year. And you can see there in blue, that's the share of our revenue that was contributed from fares and parking. And then we also, taxpayers in the BART district contribute significantly on the right, you can see in green as well. So fiscal 20, the tail end of our fiscal 20, the pandemic began, we took a hit there on our fare revenue. And then in fiscal 21, you can see in the third row there, our operating revenue really just completely collapsed as riders felt that they needed to stay home for COVID safety reasons. And you can see on the right side of this graphic, what has kept us able to operate has been the large amount of emergency assistance from the federal government as conveyed through the MTC. So you can see on the bottom, that is our projected budget for fiscal 22. We're projecting some recovery of ridership there. You can see in the dark blue bar is getting a little bigger, but we are going to continue to rely on a large amount of federal emergency assistance here in our fiscal 22. And actually the MTC Commission voted this morning on allocations of the American Rescue Plan funds to the Bay Area transit agencies, and those funds are significant and will actually allow us some stability here, both for this fiscal year and we hope for a large amount of the next fiscal year as well. So that allows BART to plan ahead here just a little bit. In terms of where we see ridership going, this is a graphic that just shows a projection of our ridership that we use for our fiscal 22 budget. Our fiscal 22 just started here in July. And the orange line is actual ridership recovery as a percentage of the pre-COVID level. The gray sort of cloud there, you see, that's the wide range of uncertainty going forward. Obviously, nobody knows what's going to happen, certainly not us. And then the dotted line is our projection that we're using for our budget. And you can see in the actuals there through June, we are just a little bit ahead of budget, but as ridership has started to increase, but remains quite low. So you can see in the far right there, even at the end of this fiscal year, we're projecting ridership just over half of our pre-COVID level, as we assume, lingering impacts of the pandemic, as well as we expect to be a durable shift toward a hybrid remote work. And that's going to remain a very significant challenge to BART's finances over the next several years, we expect. We have tried to take advantage here of the reduction in service that we had to make. So we did scale back service substantially to conserve resources during the pandemic with much lower ridership levels. But we have tried to use the extra time that we had in the schedule to advance capital projects, construction projects to keep the system in good shape. So That both saved BART over $15 million in project costs, advanced several projects that are funded by the Measure RR system renewal plan that Contra Costa, among the other BART district counties, voted for in 2016, and prevent some disruptions down the road to service for riders. So that's a silver lining here in the pandemic for us. In terms of what happens now, we are, so as I said, we cut back service, about 40% of service we reduced during the pandemic. As we see and are hoping to support the regional recovery over the next several months and in the years ahead, we have started to add back service already. A little bit of service we added on July 15th, but the big move is actually this coming Monday. So we're going to be adding back to our normal hours, 6 days a week, all the way until midnight close, and then restoring 15-minute frequencies on each of our 5 lines on weekdays. So there won't be quite as much peak service, peak of the peak service as we had to deal with crowding pre-pandemic, but otherwise weekday daytime will be very similar to pre-pandemic levels. And on Saturdays, we will be having 5 route service, which is actually more service than we had pre-pandemic. So, and the other investment here, we are having a promotional fares, 50% off all Clipper fares in September, to try to say thank you to our riders, welcome folks back, and when we think a lot of people will be changing their schedules in September is when we time that. So there's a couple more parts of our welcome back plan that I think Ricky was going to walk through for us.
So in recognizing that we not only have to, return to our regular hours at some point, we also have to make sure that as we welcome back riders, we also make sure that they have an improved experience within the BART system. So as far as health measures at this time, we still do have the mask mandate, which actually is it's TSA mandate, and it does go through currently September 13th. And as of June, all of our trains now have hospital grade MERV 14 filters, and they actually replace and filter all the air in the train cars every 70 seconds. And we are still testing UV lighting in our air ducts. We do continue to run longer trains, and we also still have our occupancy data on the BART website as of today. Next slide. So what's new? Some of you may have already heard we now have revenue service into Santa Clara County, and we have opened the first 2 stations at Milpitas and Berryessa. And hopefully you all have had an opportunity to ride one of the new trains that have come into service. We are adding cars regularly, and we also have added more cleaning staff. And the great thing about the new cars is that they're also, significantly easier for us to clean and keep clean. And we have introduced the mobile payment and Clipper Start. For more information for that, you can go to clippercard.com, and there it will give you the instructions on how to download. And you can also transfer your plastic Clipper card onto your phone, or you can set up payment through Google Pay and Apple Pay. And we also now have it so that you can pay for your parking through our BART app. That is also available in both the Google Store and the Apple Store. And you can also find more information about that on the BART website, on not just paying through the parking app, but other ways that you can pay for parking. Next slide. And one of the things that we are actually quite very excited about is, introduction of our police reforms and changes to our BART Police Department. So we've created the new Progressive Policing and Community Engagement Bureau. And this is important because one of the things that we're trying to do as a department is have a transparent, equitable, and innovative policing practices. And part of this really is to help improve public safety, because we recognize that, you know, there are issues that happen within the system that can be better addressed through other means that don't necessarily involve engaging an armed officer. So with that said, we actually have expanded the ambassador program. And as you can see, we're doubling that number, and we will be hiring new crisis intervention specialists. I believe we'll have about 20 of them, and they will be trained in de-escalation techniques. And as you can see, we also have the BART Watch app, which everyone should download. And this is actually a great way to notify if you notice someone on the system who actually is in distress, because not everything is a 911 call, but you also want to notify authorities that there may be an issue within the system so that we can get people down there to check it out. And it's really great now because we will have a more visible presence in the system with the 20 ambassadors and the 20 crisis intervention specialists. And we, of course, also have call boxes on the trains. Next slide. So we also are doing as much as we can to be good partners in the region when it comes to addressing homelessness. And, you know, we recognize that the system is not necessarily the safest place for, you know, people who are experiencing homelessness to spend their days out, and even sometimes in the evening. So with that said, BART did recently hire a manager of social services who will be developing a strategic homeless action plan. And we have reached this point because between fiscal year 14 and fiscal year 22, BART has had to add over 90 positions cumulatively, and we budget nearly $100 million in total to address these types of quality of life issues. So at this juncture, we recognize that it's very important that in developing this plan and how to best use our limited resources for this is, you know, understanding what best practices are around addressing homelessness issues, developing a plan for funding some of our activities, and also, you know, advocating for, more resources to address these issues. We also are doing a great deal of work around regional coordination, and in Contra Costa County, we work very closely with the core team. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, it is the Coordinated Outreach, Referral, and Engagement. So that is the homeless outreach team in Contra Costa County. And we are also engaged with the Regional Impact Council, which is a 9-county roundtable of stakeholders who specifically deal with tackling the region's housing insecurity and also our homelessness crisis. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, with progressive policing, one of the places where our crisis intervention specialists will actually be very helpful, as well as our ambassadors, are in helping try and connect people we find in the system who may be in distress or may be homeless to appropriate services. And as some of you already know, as I mentioned before, we do work with Contra Costa County, and we do some cost sharing around this with CORE. And last but not least, and most important, and this is something that I know CCTA can appreciate, the importance of data and metrics. And part of this homeless action plan will include a focus on gathering as much data as possible on this issue within our system so that we can better focus on how we do use these resources and district efforts around homelessness. Because right now we'll have incidents throughout the system, but we don't always know at any given point in time exactly how many, exactly where the, repeat problems are, especially if we're dealing with things like track fires. And oftentimes we don't have like good data that we're sharing with the counties and other entities that we work with. And we all know part of that is just the nature of things right now as we all work toward better coordination across a host of issues. So if anyone wants any additional information on any of the things that I've mentioned, specifically around our strategic homeless action plan and our progressive policing bureau, we would be more than happy to pull in appropriate BART staff to present to you all on those specific issues, because they are very in depth, but right now it's just like a broad overview of how we are trying to improve the ridership experience as more people return to the system.
Thanks, Ricky. So just to wrap up here, we're also continuing with the capital investment program that we have at BART, and several major construction projects underway, as well as Ricky mentioned, replacement of the BART fleet is well underway now. So we're continuing to purchase new rail cars. We have a long-term plan to expand the capacity of the system with more cars and a new train control system. We'll be investing in that this year. We are continuing with a program to replace all of the fare gates in the system with new and more secure fare gates. We're also continuing with the measure our funded system renewal projects. For example, the replacement of all of our traction power infrastructure, focusing right now on our major traction power cables. So that work continues even in these extraordinary times. We are hopeful for recovery here, a significant recovery in this year that just began for us in July, but mindful of some real challenges that lie ahead. So we'll wrap up there. Thanks for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from any of the committee members? We'll take those at this time.
Chair Miller, this is Claire Linder.
Go right ahead, Claire.
Thank you. Great presentation. I use BART quite frequently, so it's nice to see all of these improvements. I have two questions / comments. One's the comment, and then I'll go to the question. The first one is, BART is so dependent on enterprise type accounting. You're selling a service to the public. I just wonder, is there a way to capture like all of the value that BART brings to the Bay Area? Like congestion management and keeping people off the roads and our greenhouse gas, climate change goals, getting people to concerts. There's a lot of value there that, I think should be captured in addition to, fares and money coming through the gates. That's my first comment. And then my other question is, how can we as committee members and citizens support BART in its recovery efforts?
Well, first of all, on the question of providing value, we agree. We think BART brings a lot of value. Back in the when we were putting together the campaign for Measure RR in 2016, we tried to do a pretty complete accounting of all those areas, many of which that you mentioned, Claire. And as we look ahead and try to think about the future of BART and how we maintain the service that we provide, we may have to do a similar set of conversations with the public. At this point, in terms of how to support, we certainly, first of all, writing BART and putting the word out there about the kinds of improvements and services for riders that we're carrying out and that we described today, that's a big help. And then, in concrete terms, there certainly are specific funding requests that Ricky is involved in conversations with the CCTA, we try to make our case for those, and we certainly appreciate your support on those.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Linder. Any other
Yes,
comments?
Chair Miller, Philip Calley.
Mr. Halley, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the presenters from BART. Great presentation. I do have a couple of comments and questions. I guess my first comment would be on the, I think it was Ms. Wells that talked about the Clipper card and adding it to your phone. I would just caution when we spread that information out to the public and to our potential constituents that once you transfer your Clipper card to your Apple phone, you cannot use your hard Clipper card again. So, that's one of the things to just be careful doing that, because if you leave your phone at home by mistake, then you won't be able to use your Clipper card and you'll be very frustrated at one of the pay gates. So that's just a comment there. There was an indication that in September, there's going to be a 50% promotional fare. I presume that is equal to align with, I think BART's doing 50% for the Clipper Start. So the Clipper Start will not be an additional 50%. Is that correct? Or how will that work?
Oh, thanks. Good clarification. So BART is actually 20% off the Clipper Start, where some of the other agencies are 50%. BART is 20%. But the way the September promotion works, everybody's fares are half off. So if you have a Clipper Start, you pay half as much as you would with your Clipper Start. Seniors, youth discounts, et cetera, are the same. So everybody gets half off for that month.
That's great news. I will make sure we spread the word on that. In terms of BART riding itself, I'm out in Brentwood. Prior to the pandemic, I've ridden BART since I've grown up many years ago. But recently I've been riding it back and forth from Brentwood into downtown Oakland to my office. And, once the pandemic hit, obviously I worked from home the vast majority of the time. And we'll be heading back into the office on a sort of modified schedule, but I did go in a couple of times, and there still seems to be this lack of awareness of individuals riding BART for distancing. Everybody's, I think, has got the message on the mask, but as the trains start getting full, people don't understand that they can't just stand right in front of you or facing you and stuff. What messaging are you continuing to do, or have you been doing?
That is a good question. I'm actually not sure of the specifics of the messaging that's being given on the trains and in the stations at this moment. On that, happy to check with our public communications folks.
No worries. I will be on there, and I know it's going to be a continual effort from BART to kind of continue to have the word out there. It was a concern. And then my last comment, I'm not sure how you'll sort of take it, is you indicated that the plan is to ramp up service towards the end of the year. Some of the service will increase to pre-pandemic service, I think on the weekend you mentioned. Is staffing ramping up to align with that in terms of individuals on the trains, keeping the trains cleaned? I think there's a fine line between when you bring them on board or when you ramp up to when you do the service, but how do you guys see that working?
Yeah, good question. So first, I'm not sure I was as clear as I could have been about exactly the schedule of the service changes. So the biggest move is just what's going to happen this coming Monday, where we're going to go back to quite close normal service hours and close to on 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and then quite close to pre-pandemic frequencies on the weekdays. In terms of staffing, we were able, because of the federal assistance, we didn't have to lay anyone off during the pandemic, but we did have, you know, we had a hiring freeze, so we lost some staff due to attrition. So we've been trying to add back. The ramp up of service is about as fast as we can do it, given the hiring and the training. In terms of the cleaning staff in particular, though, we are adding positions over and above what we had pre-pandemic to try to have cleaner trains and stations, because we know that's you know, for the last couple of years in particular, that's been something that's come through on our customer surveys. So trying to bring people back in an environment that's going to be what they want to see when they get back on the train. We do our next service change, and I'll say that hiring is underway. We haven't hired all of the new positions, but we have added some of them. And then the next service change would officially be scheduled for February. So this current new schedule is planned to run from August through February.
Cool, thank you. You know, we're out here to support BART. Been riding them since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and I will continue to do that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Miller. That's all I have.
Thanks.
Excellent. Are there other voices to add to this? All right. Well,
It's like member Ash has a.
Oh,
hand.
thank you. Sorry, Mr. Ash. Please go right ahead.
Can you hear me? All right. It was just earlier in your slides, you talked about a projection of future ridership. How are you guys calculating that, right? I don't think any of us could have anticipated the rise of the Delta variant, but you also talk about the flexible schedules that companies are going to have in the future, right? I know living in Walnut Creek, you know, I would say at least a third of my neighbors used to take BART. None of those individuals are going to go back 5 days a week. I mean, 1 out of like 40 people aren't going to go back that I personally know. Not scientific or anything like that, but how do you actually calculate that usage into it with those lifelong changes that we've never seen before, right?
Right. Let me say first that we definitely don't have a crystal ball, and we don't know what's going to happen. So we're just trying to make some educated guesses with the information that we have. In terms of you know, the near-term projections, you know, we didn't obviously predict the Delta variant. We did kind of hedge on our forecasts a little bit, given the potential for the variants. And at the time, we were definitely concerned about the rollout timeline of vaccines. That's gone a little bit faster than we anticipated in the Bay Area. So thus far, we're a little ahead of projection, but you know, remains to be seen what happens next. I think our assumption is consistent with what you described in terms of how people return to the office. Our assumption is that most people who have jobs that can be done remotely will be on some kind of hybrid remote work schedule. So, you know, in terms of our projections for this year, I think we have it landing at the typical office-bound commuter is going to be, if they were 5 days a week before, they're going to be 2.5 days, I think is what our projections assume. You know, we did a survey fairly recently that was just a little bit more optimistic than what we had assumed, but it's also hard to know exactly what people are going to do. So I think in terms of our you know, multi-year future, I think our expectation is that remote work is going to be part of how people work here in the Bay Area for some time. That's no, it has pros and cons. It's challenging for BART, might be great for those workers in certain ways, but we're going to have to adjust. We're going to have to adjust our plan, our operating plan, our financial plans. BART's going to have to make some big adjustments in the years ahead. We don't have all those plans yet.
And how, and this goes to you, Mike, and Matt, as a follow-up, how many of those people that are starting now to go back into the office are driving instead of taking BART? Mm-hmm. I think everybody here gets the fact that we wanted people on BART and not driving, but that's got to impact the roads. It's got to impact 24 in particular, coming from the Walnut Creek, Lafayette, right through Oakland and area. How do we account for that, and how do we plan for that mess, right? This is to probably both of you a little bit. I don't know how you calculate all that change.
Yeah, I mean, you all know 24 probably better than me as an Oakland resident, but and the Caldecott Tunnel situation, but the data shows us that most of the bridges are at or above their pre-pandemic traffic levels now. So in terms of BART, that in some ways is an upward pressure on our ridership, right? As people get frustrated with traffic, they may consider transit. But in terms of CCTA's planning, lots to think about there.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So, a lot of the planning we've done and what we took to our board last year was BART's initial kind of ridership estimates, like what you saw in the presentation today. They released an initial set of those last year. And so we kind of came up with a tool where we could, based on work from home rates, BART ridership, and a couple of other employment factors, we kind of came up with this tool that will show us how bad congestion will be on those parallel routes like 24, like 80. We have an idea of what the freeways could look like based on various, ridership rates and work from home rates. And what we've done is we've taken it to our board to inform them. CCTA can't do it. We don't operate the freeways, so we can't do a lot. But what we're doing is trying to encourage our board members and stakeholders about what it could look like, and that everybody, cities, business owner, employers need to start thinking about ways they can help their constituents get to work in an easier fashion, whether it's, more, if they have to go into the office, can they, go in at a different time? Those same old questions we've been asking for years, but now it's real. We're going to have I don't think the freeways are going to look too good right at the beginning of September and into October, when people are trying to decide, how they get back to the office. But I didn't know about BART's discount for September, so that to me is awesome. Hopefully that'll sway a lot of people when they're trying to make that initial decision. So,
well, and
we're
Matt,
going to be following
school getting back into session.
And
is
school,
gonna create
once
the
DVC
old-
opens up, traffic goes like this on 680 and 4.
It should create a significant, impetus for people to consider the reasons why we've developed mass transit in the first place. Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to take a combination. 511, Contra Costa doing their job, encouraging people to try different things, including BART. And then the cities need to be planning for these shorter trips where people are just getting around town or getting to the BART station for those longer trips, but trying to maybe keep people out of their cars for shorter trips, just because there are going to be a lot more people on the roads this fall. That's my best guess. We'll continue to educate our board, but BART is a really big player in our transportation system, so we kind of have to follow their lead, because like Claire said, without the benefits that BART provides are just immense. You don't know until BART shuts down how immense those benefits are. So it's kind of like we follow those BART users and rates, and then we adjust our plans for the highways and other modes based on that. They're that big of a player.
And actually, maybe just one more point on that question is, we do think it's nearly certain that that remote work is a bigger factor in people's plans in the years ahead. I think most people are thinking that way these days, but it's not necessarily a done deal that transit is a lower share of the trips that remain, right? That in some ways that's up to us. So that is why, despite the real, very serious financial risk that BART faces, that's why we're investing a chunk of the federal emergency money in bringing back as much service as we possibly can. And these other initiatives that we talked about today is to try to win back as much of the commute share as we possibly can.
All right. Any other questions? I have a couple, but they're really fast. I look like Mr. Carr would like to ask one from Danville. Go ahead, Mr. Carr.
Yes, I actually, I'm going to build on Jared's question because he asked a number of the same things that were on my mind. I was struck, I think it was slide 3, where your period of stabilization got to somewhere 52, 54% or some such number, and appreciate this really is a crystal ball you're having to work with. But what are the signposts that you're going to have over the next 12 to 36 months that indicate where that new plateau is going to be and how you're going to respond to that? If we terminal out at 50 to 60% versus pre-pandemic, that clearly gives a different trajectory to what service you provide and where you're going to focus longer term capital expenditure. Curious how you're getting your head around all that.
Yeah, good question. So we have a number of different sort of sub markets that we have our eye on, and we actually have a new monthly ridership report that we're posting on the BART website that I would encourage you guys to. It comes out, a few days after the close of each month, that I would encourage anybody interested to look at, where we break things down sort of into some sort of core markets, inner East Bay, inner West Bay, Trans Bay, the time of day by across the weekday. One thing we saw during the pandemic is that the biggest the market that got hit the hardest was the Trans Bay market, and the market bound for downtown San Francisco, right? The office workers stayed home, almost all of them. But a lot of people who continue to rely on transit we're continuing to make inner East Bay trips. We're continuing to travel to some degree on the weekend and the evening when we were providing service in the evening. I think, one market we're going to keep our eye on really closely, of course, is that Trans Bay and San Francisco bound market. Seeing how it trends in relation to the sort of occupancies of offices, which we do have some data sources for. It's going to be really important, and how it relates to the traffic. I think, looking further ahead, I think we really need to keep an eye also on the recovery of the midday, the evening, and the weekends. It may be, as travel patterns shift, that those become an increasingly important share of our market, and we will have to adjust service accordingly.
All right. I've got a couple of quick questions, and then we'll go to public comment and/or questions. But mine are very, very fast. First of all, just an observation. As I'm looking through and I'm seeing new options for pay, the emphasis on the new cars and how they're easier to clean and so forth, and as Ms. Wells was speaking to the equity issues, and also the concerns for the homelessness and so forth, and getting maybe some non-deputized eyes out there in the system, and also recruiting more people into the BART Watch with the concept of you can send us a text message and stuff like that. All of these things say to me that BART is acting on the number 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of priorities that have surely been coming back in your surveys and polling. So that is promising. The one thing I was going to add to that may not be evident through a ton of polling is we, being Contra Costa out here, your suburban brothers, as less so than in the urban environments, do occasionally bridle a bit when we hear that when new stations are built, that there's not a focus on putting enough parking around it, because quote unquote we're all heading to this greener environment and everybody wants to bike to the station and stuff like that. So in the calmest and most positive way possible, I'm just offering observations from your suburban brothers that we do care a lot about parking. That doesn't mean a lot right now when numbers are down, But as new stations are built, we definitely care about adequate parking being there because it's pretty far in between places for us as opposed to in the city dwellers. All right. And then the other thing the last thing I would just say is I'm excited to see the ability finally to pay electronically and separately for the parking that's just been, that was kind of the duality of the system is frustrating and challenging. It's good to see that options are being created so that I don't have to panic because I don't have some singles in my wallet. Okay. All right. With that, I think I'd like to open it up for public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to ask a question or make an observation, 3-minute limit, raise your hand, please, or press, I think it's *9 on the phone. Doesn't appear that we have any hands raised. I'm looking over there. So moving on, well, I guess I would just like to thank our illustrious guests for joining us today, because you did give us a good glimpse, a nice cross section into what's going on. We've all been concerned, and we're your brothers in this struggle. We're all trying to figure out how to get people from A to B, and as Matt pointed out, you're the biggest lift, and then we're just sort of like you're the rocks in the jar, and we're the sand that pours around the rocks to fill in what's left over. And so thanks for the heavy lift, and best of luck and best wishes for a growing population of denizens on your service in the coming days.
Thanks a lot for that, and thank you guys for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Matt, thanks for getting us great speakers. And with that, we do need to move on to our next regular agenda item. And that is, we are also being joined by members from the City of Hercules staff to have a look at the City of Hercules calendar year 2018 and 2019 growth management program compliance checklist. I think some of you on this committee may have seen a few of these before. Matt, would you be so kind as to introduce the staff that are joining us today?
Sure, thanks, Chair Miller. Tonight we have Mike Roberts from the City of Hercules. He represents the engineering public works side of the House. And this is his first checklist presentation. So be nice to him, but I think he's got the information you're looking for. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike and let him present the city's checklist. Mike?
Thank you, Matt, for those kind words and introduction. If the committee would just give me a few moments here to share a screen and load up my presentation.
Absolutely.
All right, is the
and I think you want to reverse that. Use under the slideshow tab, maybe use presenter view. I guess we're seeing what your next slide is and your notes. Not a big deal. This, by the way, this happens like 8 out of 10 times. We're seeing you. Okay. You're seeing us. So
you're seeing. I'm sorry. You're seeing the second slide.
We see the slide. And then on the right side, we see next slide and any notes that you have for yourself. So
Mike, try going to display settings at the top of the screen.
Yep.
And swap presenter.
Slide. There you go.
There we go.
Oh, we are on chart here. Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm Mike Roberts, the Public Works Director, City Engineer for the City of Hercules. As Matt mentioned, I'm actually the alternate for the checklist. Our primary is Robert Reber, our Community Development Director. He's not able to be here tonight. We're so thinly staffed. He actually has no planners underneath him. But I'm very excited to be here tonight, given how much appreciation we have for receiving the Measure J Return to Source funds. I believe we're going to be getting about $450,000 this coming year. Critical funding for us to maintain our pavement condition index, everything from fixing sidewalks, patching potholes, new signs, striping. So very happy to be here tonight. And in putting together a presentation, I put some thought into what would not only be informative, but of most interest to the community members. And so I chose to focus on our bayfront development. So what you're seeing here in this first slide is 1,500 feet of restored Refugio Creek. And then immediately to the right, you have the mixed use private development we call the Exchange. And then to the right of that, you can see the John Muir Parkway, which was an extension we did to lead to our regional intermodal transit station. So the Bayfront development is actually regulated by the Waterfront District Master Plan, which was adopted initially in 2000. So it's a transit-oriented development that encourages walking, bicycling, bus, and rail to relieve traffic on San Pablo and I-80. As you know, those are regional routes of significance. So given it's the reporting year of 2018-19, what I'm going to do is on that exhibit, start from the top right where it says the village, then move on to the middle where it says the Regional Intermodal Transportation Station. That's what you see projecting out into the bay. And then of course, Bay Trail West, which is to the very left of your screen above the bowl, running parallel to the railroad tracks. It's a bit hard to see. So that white building you saw previously is the Exchange, and construction began in 2018. It's 172 multifamily apartments with 12,000 square feet of ground floor and underground parking. I should mention that we do exact the sub-regional traffic mitigation program impact fees on all develops in Hercules, including this one, and that's for regional mitigation to ensure it pays its fair share. If you look at the architecture here, you can see in the street, you can see we have a bike lane, a bike rack, and then 14-foot wide sidewalk with eaves to create a sort of seamless interface between the public and the private to encourage walking and biking. Here's a view of the Exchange from across the creek you saw previously. Difficult to see, but the bollards running along there are actually the Creekside Trail that was installed, very popular with walkers and bicyclists. For the Exchange, all 172 apartments will be designated as workforce housing. So that's rent restricted for 80 to 120% of the median income. And this is to help out middle income workforce who may not necessarily qualify for traditional affordable rental housing programs, but are priced out of the communities where they work. So ideally people will take people off of Highway 4, 80, 680 and such. So across the street is the Grand, which was approved by the Planning Commission in 2018. That has 232 multifamily residential units and then 12,000 square feet of amenity space. For this one, it's 5% affordable units at 60% median income. So that's 15 affordable units total. And it currently has a temporary certificate of occupancy. And then rounding out the development in the village there, warehouse and the annex were approved by the Planning Commission in 2019, 476 multifamily units. Again, 5% affordability requirement of 60% median income, which is 24 units total. And there's actually 552 structured parking spaces there. That's currently in plan check. So in sum, for the reporting period in the village alone, there's 880 residential units that were either constructed or entitled, which include workforce and affordable housing. So just a short half block away is our planned regional intermodal transportation center, which will be bus, train, and then potentially ferry out into the future. And train service will be provided by Capital Corridor. It's been designated as a candidate station. Currently, more than 30 trains run a day. As I mentioned before, it's within an easy walk and bike ride from the Bayfront development, but there will be additional ridership through expanded local and regional bus, which will include Rodeo. That's a community of concern. So I should mention, while it does have its own parking, there's to be a parking agreement between the public facilities and the private facilities to make the best use of all available parking. And then it's easily accessed from State Route 4 and I-80 and will reduce traffic on 80, which is one of the most congested corridors here in the Bay Area. So the 2040 projection for annual boardings is 131,000 with a VMT reduction of 4.3 million. To date, we've received 43 million in grant funding. 65 million more is needed to actually get the train to stop. The RITC is a frequent recipient of the STMP competitive grant funding, and the city does actively participate in WICTAC on both sides of the business, both public works and planning. And then for the reporting period, the Measure J money was used for grant administration, which in looking at the dollar amounts, I'm sure you can see is quite a bit of work. So then rounding out Bayfront development is the Bay Trail West, which eliminated a 1,200 foot gap in the Bay Trail. And like always, we try to use our Measure J monies as a local match. In this case, we leveraged 1.1 million in One Bay Area grant funding. I think the Measure J amount was around 143,000. Very popular, obviously, with walkers and bikers, and the Bay Trail does bisect the future train station. So then other notable GMP checklist items outside the Bayfront development would be the 2018 street resurfacing project, 970,000 total, 114,000 of Measure J. As you can see, we do have our signs up. The city adopts a 5-year CIP as part of the annual budget process, and the maintenance effort for the reporting period is 338,000, but we actually spent 906 and 736,000. So well above the required amount. Then we did do a general plan amendment in 2018 to update the circulation element, which integrated complete streets into the general plan. We did utilize CCTA's countywide traffic model. And then of course, CEQA and project notices were sent to CCTA and WICTAC, as we typically do in all instances. Ultimately allowed our traffic impact fee, our local program, to be updated to ensure development pays its fair share. And then our last project in the reporting period is Sycamore Crossing, which was a mixed-use development, 29,000 square feet of retail, 105-room hotel, the first in Hercules, which is currently under plan check, and then 120 multifamily residences. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And I think actually at this point, I'll stop share so we can go back to gallery view.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Roberts. Had occasion to be in your area recently, and I saw much of the development going on, and I'm very impressed with what's happening. I'd like to open it up to other members of the committee to make observations or comments. Anyone want to ask questions? I see Mr. Haley's hand's up. Very good. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Let's see if I can stop raising my hand here. There we go. I keep putting it up there. Let's see. I always like to talk to people, so I'm looking for his picture there. There we go. Mr. Roberts, thank you very much. You answered, or at least you touched on a couple of questions that I had. I actually went through the plan. Didn't realize it was going to be close to 500 pages, but went through it. And one of the things that struck me the most in the plan was the affordable housing units. You know, obviously with each of the different development agreements, there were different percentages assigned to the developments for affordable housing. So, you know, I'm going to look at this where I made some comments here. On one of them that was supposed to have, 232 multifamily units, 24 units were low affordable units. You mentioned another one that had 15 affordable units on it. But when you look at the larger development, when you compile all of them together, you're only adding around 2% or 2.5% of affordable housing of all the housing units that are being developed there. That's a concern in my eyes. I mean, it seems like the bare minimum is being put into place, and we're not doing enough to show equity and allow individuals to move in. I know it's not your doing, so let me start with that. Also in the plan, and I heard you say at the beginning that you're kind of the alternate for this, and so Matt and Chair Miller, if this question has come up before and has been addressed, let me know. But I also noticed in the document that, I forget which year it was, let's just call it a couple of years ago, the city rescinded their affordable housing inclusionary policy or documents because the RDA had sort of dissolved or gone away. So does that mean future developments won't include affordable housing or a requirement for affordable housing? So that's it. I'll stop with that.
Those are good questions.
Yeah, great observations, Committee Member Haley. So you're right, I'm on the Public Works side of the House. My observation has been at minimum, the requirement is 5% affordable units at 60% of the median income. And I know those are all negotiated, have been previously negotiated as part of longstanding development agreements. I believe there is, an interest in raising the amount of affordable housing in Hercules. We were very pleased to be executing that agreement with Cal CHA on the workforce housing. And while that doesn't qualify for affordable housing, I think it does help a lot for the people who are in the middle. But I'm happy to pass along your comments to our Community Development Director. I know he does share your concerns.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to get it out there in case someone else knows. The item that I'm talking about that was rescinded, I highlighted it. Give me just a second and it was an ordinance. Here we go. It says Ordinance 469 passed and adopted on June 12th, 2012 by the City Council, amended Chapter 10-19 of the Hercules Municipal Code to suspend indefinitely the city's inclusionary housing requirements due to the elimination of the redevelopment agencies. So that itself, I think, begs the question, so what's next? Is the City Council going to do something else to address the issue of affordable housing in Hercules? As we all know, transportation and housing and land use, they all go hand in hand. And so how are we going to address those? So thank you. Thank you, Chair Miller.
And you know what, as a planning commissioner on another body, let me just, and this isn't saying anything official from that body, I'm just saying we see state laws being passed, and AB 35, of course, put it out there so that developers would be able to bypass CEQA, they would get CEQA exemptions and not have to worry about certain concerns when doing developments if they included at least 10%. So I think some of these developments that Mr. Roberts is speaking of came prior to the passing. Well, I guess 2017 technically, I guess is when AB 35 came in, but those may have already been approved prior to that, because if they were built in 2018-19, they probably were actually approved at least a year or two. The plans were put out there a year or two in advance. My point simply being that there are definitely some incentives being put out there to developers to make a minimum of 10% of their infill be low income. And that's just an observation from me. I'm not speaking for Mr. Roberts or any other body. So there are definitely some carrots out there.
Chair, certainly, if the committee would like, I'd be very happy to respond in an email.
Yes.
Or have our Community Development Director submit a response.
Yeah, especially about the dissolution of the one body. It may be related to the passage of AB 35. They may have felt like this is going to make it happen on autopilot. We'll see, but I think we would like to see an answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts, for that offer.
We'll work with city staff to get a response.
Cool. Other questions from other members or observations? I'll just offer this one, again, stepping or talking as a planning commissioner briefly. I'll just say I'm envious of the amount of land that you've got to work with there. We're in Clayton, that's where I'm from. And we're pretty much built out, but the land that you've been working with here, I'm seeing a good focus on density, and yet there's also this simultaneous focus on preserving the some of the habitats, some of the environmental aspects there. So how can I not laud you for those efforts? And I'm glad. It's really nice to have somebody come up to the table and say how grateful they are for the return, the return funds. It's nice, yeah. And you seem to be stewarding them well. So thanks for your efforts very much. All right, now as is our part, we need to do our perfunctory function here of approving this. Let's see, representative from Hercules, Mr. Powell is here.
Yes.
Would you like to make a motion regarding this?
Yes. Motion to approve the checklist from City Hercules.
All right, and we'll call for a roll call vote. Mr. Powell's, I'm going to briefly do point of order. I have not called for public comment on this particular issue, and it makes sense to do so before we have voted. So I'm briefly going to step back and ask if any member of this public would like to make public comment on this agenda item. Please raise your hand or press 9, star 9. All right, so we double back and let's go ahead, and Mr. Powell has moved that we accept this checklist as submitted. May I have a second? I get a second from Mr. Ash. Okay. And so therefore then Ms. Shahan, if you would call our vote.
Yes, please. Committee member Ash, how do you vote?
In favor.
Bristow?
In favor.
Committee member Bristow? Committee member Bankert? Committee member Halley?
Oh, he's unmuted now, Mr. Bankert is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in an airport. I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Committee member Halley?
Yes.
Committee member Hammond?
Approve.
Committee member Hurley? Committee member Carr?
Abstain.
Carr, was that abstain?
Yes.
Okay. Committee member Leahy? Committee member Linder?
Approve.
Committee member Moriarty?
Approve.
Committee member Powell's?
Approve.
Committee member Vega? Committee member Yao? Vice Chair Rosenberg?
You're on mute. Thumbs up.
And Chair Miller?
Aye.
Motion passes by majority present.
Very good. Thank you so much. And thank you, Hercules. Thank you for showing up and putting in a good presentation.
Thank you for having me tonight.
All right. Give me one moment here. Next item on the agenda, as I had alluded to earlier, I'm so sad that Ms. Vega is not here this evening. Next item on the agenda is the City of Lafayette's calendar years 2018 and 2019 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. Matt, would you introduce staff from City of Lafayette, please?
Sure, thank you, Chair Miller. So tonight, presenting the Measure J GMP compliance checklist from the City of Lafayette. We have on the planning side, Sarah Allen, and on the engineering public works side, we have Mike Moran. We in the past, we've had Greg Wolf. So I know this is Sarah's first time, and I think Mike's been around before, at least in the background. So
We'll be gentle.
so once again, be nice to Sarah. So
Absolutely.
I will hand it over to her. She looks like she's sharing her screen, and let her take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. So as Matt mentioned, I'm Sarah Allen in the planning department, and I'm joined here by Mike Moran in our engineering department. And we'll go over just briefly sort of what's in the checklist regarding both development projects as well as transportation projects. So in 2018, we approved 56 units, including 9 ADUs, and we had a total of 31 actual building permits issued. So obviously the building permits issued were from previous year's applications. So, and then 2019, we had 107 units approved, 14 of which were ADUs, with 87 building permits issued. We had 3 major projects. 210 Lafayette Circle is a 12-unit project, which included 2 below market rate units and was approved in 2018. One of the features that was listed in the Measure J checklist was a walkway along the side of the building towards a creek, which there's an anticipated future creek crossing, which would connect to the downtown and to the BART specifically. It is currently under construction. We have another project, the Mill at Brown Avenue, which was approved in 2019, 13 condominium units, 2 of which were below market rate rentals. And some of the transportation improvements associated with this project were a pedestrian bump out on Mount Yellow Boulevard, a relocated bus stop, as well as a widened sidewalk. And this also is currently under construction. And then we also had Valley View Apartments, which was approved in 2019. Those are 42 apartments. Some of the transportation improvements was a new public sidewalk was conditioned, as well as contribution towards a crosswalk, mid-block crosswalk on that street. This was approved, but is not yet under construction. So I'll hand it over to Mike to talk a little bit about some of the transportation improvements.
So committee, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, I am not able to start my video, so I apologize. I tested it out earlier, and I don't know if that's if I'm not allowed to, or if I'm just got technical difficulties, but as long as you can hear me. Just continuing with our capital projects for 2018 and 19, we did do road rehabilitation where we reconstructed streets, and we typically use a plethora of sources that always includes Measure J, gas tax, and general fund. And we always update ramps as needed and crosswalks and things of that sort, and sidewalks as well on curb and gutter if they're applicable. So next slide, please. So the next year we had another road rehabilitation project. Very similar. We're in the road maintenance business here in Lafayette. We haven't added a new street, at least in the time that I've been there, which is 24 years, and I don't know that we will in the next 24 years. So we're also built out. You might get some private streets here and there, but we're pretty much maintaining 60 and 70-year-old streets. So next slide. We did add one flashing beacon crosswalk during those years. We've added even more since then, but in 18 and 19, this was at the La Marinda Lafayette Moraga Trail crossing at Glenside. It parallels St. Mary's Road right out there, and it accesses our community center, 2 different swim clubs, and Burton Valley Elementary School. And we were noticing maybe some closer calls than we would have liked, particularly for junior high school aged bikers at this location crossing this. So we did add an RFB at this location. And Moraga Road, Mount Diablo signal upgrade project. We added some technology to give us some counts, some grid smart detectors at First Street and at Moraga Road, both at Mount Diablo Boulevard. Those were two of our busiest intersections. That was part of some Measure J funding with a little bit of supplemented gas tax. And it allowed us to do a pilot study, which we did, and we found we could improve traffic flow, but it was at the expense of pedestrians and bikers crossing the major intersection there. And that major intersection is at a park. It's near an elementary school, it's near the junior high school, and it's a frequent pedestrian route for those age users. So we ended up kind of overthrowing what we did. But we did have the data to support what we did, and we know we could flush more cars through, but since this was our downtown, we gave it back more to pedestrians. So that was an interesting project, and we ended up extending the pilot time to include over a year's worth of data to account for seasonal fluctuations at school and so forth. And then finally, along with our reconstruction projects, we try and balance out what we do for our road maintenance. So we did have a surface seal project in 2018, and then there'll be one more after this, I believe. That was a pretty large surface seal project. And the next slide should be a little bit smaller of the surface seal project. And yes, there it is. I believe it was 2019, we had a joint project with Moraga to try, and it was effective. We did lower our unit rates by doing a joint project because we did have a smaller portion that year. So that was helpful. We've done that more than once, and we'll probably do that again, team up with some of our La Miranda counterparts if we think it can be effective and get us better bang for the buck, so to speak. So, and then next slide, please. So we do have a 5-year capital improvement program. It's updated every other year. So we did that last year. We do participate with LPMC, that's the La Miranda Planning Committee, which is a subcommittee of our Southwest Area Transportation, or RTPC, is SWAT. So both of those, we're active with that. We have a very active Transportation and Circulation Commission. They're working on some controversial decisions as we speak. There'll be an appeal to our city council because they want to take away parking and make it a bike ped dedicated pathway near an elementary school. So a little controversial unit coming up there, but they're very active. They sometimes meet as much as twice a month, but it's probably more like 1 to 1.5 times a month. And then these last two, I'd have Sarah maybe speak to them a little more, but we did update our parking ordinance and we're working on a general plan update, and those are both very planning intensive.
Right. Good presentation, guys. Good presentation. I normally pass on to everyone else, other members of the committee, to ask questions, but I would like to ask one very quickly. And you sort of hinted at it a little bit on the last slide, because I was going to ask that it looked like a lot of things were not multimodal. A lot of the work was very street oriented, I guess I would say, or pavement oriented. And then you hinted at the end there that there's something proposed coming up that's along the lines of trying to dedicate something for multimodal, for bike path and stuff, and that's actually stirred a bit of controversy. Would you? Well, I guess I'll ask this in two pieces, and they're small bite size. One is, are there any particular multimodal projects that you would like to call out that got done during that period that just sort of didn't make the cut on the slides? Maybe a one that you guys are proud of or something. And the second thing is, without making it a political thing, just curious, is cycling and or walking paths a contentious issue in the area? Kind of, can you give us some context, or is this just this particular project is contentious a little bit? All right, I'll leave it at that.
Sure. So regarding the first one, and they were, we have some sidewalk gaps and some improvements in sidewalks, along with any development project. Pretty much, we're gonna require that, and that's going to include, multimodal, a bike lane if we can get it, but certainly a wider walkway or sidewalk. And we, our next cycle will have more to show, and we did a lot more with that, and we have more coming up. During that time frame, we had started our joint BART project, which is a pathway from downtown to BART. You may be familiar with it. It includes a bike station as well. We've been working a lot on that during those time frames, and then you may know or not that it was primarily Measure J funded. That funding was put on hold. We've been basically on hold, and we were able to get alternate federal funding, but now it's going to be all through BART, and that may delay it a little more. We're kind of having to reset and restart a lot of what we did. So that was a large multimodal project that we were working on during those timeframes, and I would have loved to say we had it built, in 2019 or at least by now. We have not even started construction. The packet was very close to getting ready to go out for bid. It's at the peer review level, but there are some changes to the specifications and so forth because of the change up in funding. So we're literally starting over again. So that's a big one, and it'll be coming soon. And we're doing a lot more. And to the second question, I don't know that multimodal is contentious, but people don't necessarily like the trade-offs in Lafayette. You kind of have old school and new school. We are a semi-rural area. People have said, hey, you've walked to this school for literally 60 years with no severe injuries or deaths or accidents to your students, and you want to radically change it and take away, on-street parking. That's a contentious issue. And we do have the great Lafayette Moraga Trail running through, but we don't have great ways to access it from a lot of neighborhoods. There's kind of that first last mile that you have with BART. We have that first last quarter mile getting to the bike trail. And
yeah, Mr.
Like
Moran, a lot of the projects that we do, in fact, see come before this committee are like you said, they're actually creating paths to the existing paths. They're trying to get people onto those multimodal backbones that already exist in their communities. So I'm sympathetic to what you're saying. Absolutely. And I didn't mean it.
Yeah. No, that's fine. And that is kind of the focus we're on as well. Like I said, we're not creating new streets. So I have almost no place to put a 10-foot wide walkway or, a class 1 multi-purpose path. But whatever we can do to get the first and last, we're going to try.
Excellent. Do you know what your housing allotments look like last period and this period? I know every city is appealing theirs, but I'm not asking you to assent to it. I'm just saying, do you know what the numbers were before and this cycle?
You're talking about the RENA allocation?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said RENA. Sorry.
Sure.
I was looking at the numbers of what actually got built in this and this is only 2 years of the 8-year period, but I was looking at the numbers. I was thinking, oh, those are kind of small, but they're, they are appropriate probably for the area. But then I wondered, in the greater context of things, what the barrel you're staring down looks like.
Sure. So previously it was approximately 600 units, and this time it's 2,100. So with the buffer, so it's quite a bit more.
Okay. Now I'll sort of try and step back and allow, yes, Mr. Rosenberg, Vice Chair. Oh, you're on mute, good sir.
Okay, that's better. Mike, I have a question for you. On Mount Diablo Boulevard, there's development, apartment complexes being developed right now, either under construction or completed. Has there been any thought given to some type of bus service that somebody could get from one end of town to the other, and also to the BART station as a convenience to, I guess there are many senior citizens who are moving into these units. And has there been any thought given to that?
Sarah, do you know as part of the general plan? I have received that question, For example, people want like the trolley service that Walnut Creek might have, or something like that. It would take a grant for us to do something like that. I mean, we're a low tax city, but it's a good point. And then you'd have to look at what hours you could actually operate it. I know a larger development that we're putting in, we had a requirement of a BART shuttle, for example. But the city has no immediate plans for putting in like a downtown shuttle from, say, the east end to the west end, and certainly connecting to BART. But I just recently, I mean, maybe a week ago, saw a question exactly to that. I think it will get some consideration, but it may likely be done as part of maybe homeowners associations or private shuttles rather than a city-run shuttle. That's just what I see happening, more likely going to be implemented.
Mike, just one other question. At the intersection of Moraga Road and Mount Diablo Boulevard, the right turn lane, which is heavily used, is that complete now? Have you done everything you plan on doing in the way of construction at that location?
It is, with the exception of hopefully getting some smart signals from some federal funding that I know CCTA is trying to help us get, but the configuration is complete.
Okay, thank you.
My old drum that I always used to be, I'm always interested in signaling improvements, coordination, inter-city coordination, and improvements of flow. So it's good to hear that you guys are going for some improved intelligent signaling.
Chair Miller, we have a hand from Committee Member Halley.
Mr. Halley, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So Mike and, oh my gosh, people are moving around again. Who was there she is, Sarah, thank you. It's like, where did everybody go? So I'm going to stick with the theme that I was on with the previous presentation from Hercules on affordable housing. So again, I went through, thank you very much for only having 98 pages instead of 400. So that was much, much easier. I did read through it, and there's information in there that I don't understand to be able to kind of wrap my head around what's happening with the affordable housing in Lafayette. And so in looking at the housing element, and thank you for providing 18, 19, and I think 20 as well. It looks like there's a need in the beginning of the reports. It says, here's how much need we have for affordable housing. But then towards the end of each year, the report for each year, there's how many permits were issued to kind of address that. And the housing units that are, and it seems like every year there's this hundreds of unit need, but there's a very small amount of permits issued to address it. And so sort of that question is, what can be done there? But also there's a piece in there that I somewhat understand and I don't, and that is the deed restricted parcels, I guess, or whatever, or whatever's happening in these developments. They're marked as deed restricted. And from what I understand, that means that the cities, the counties, someone has put some sort of requirements on that parcel that no matter who owns the property, they have to abide by these certain restrictions. So how does that play with affordable housing?
They usually age out after 7 years, by the way, or a certain period, but yes.
So the discrepancy with the sort of RHNA allocation and the planning for the type of housing versus the actual development and building permits really just sort of relies on the free market, right? So the city has to plan for those housing units, but ultimately we are reacting to what the market will produce and provide. And as we all know, there's a severe lack of funding for affordable housing, and there's a lot of sort of different funding sources that need to happen in order for one of those to pencil out and make sense for a developer. So that sort of describes the discrepancy there. And then your other question was regarding affordable housing.
Oh,
Sorry.
deed
And,
restrictions.
and the deed restricted parcels, does that create
Sure.
complications?
Sure. So that's actually how we ensure that affordable housing stays for the long term. So it does require, I believe it's 55 years for, it's 55 years and 65 years, one's for sale, one's for rental, and probably
wow.
transposing them at currently, but so it's deed restricted with the specific unit so that it would maintain that for the length of the agreement.
Okay, so if an affordable housing, if a development goes in with so many affordable housing units, then that deed restriction would say that those units for that period of time have to stay affordable housing units?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's defined as a percentage of the median income for the area, which
Right.
will adjust over time automatically.
Correct.
That's the longest periods I've heard, the 55 and 65. So I got to say kudos to you guys for actually like making it a very real. There's I live in Clayton, and there's some that are about to age out, and it's probably been slightly under 20 years since they've been built. So it's coming at a bad time that they're going to not be restricted. Mr. Hammond, I'm sorry, you had your hand. Oh, Mr. Haley, did you feel like questions were answered? All right, go ahead, Mr. Hammond.
Sarah and Mike, I'd like to thank you also for a really nice presentation. A small suggestion regarding bicycle access within Lafayette. Lafayette set up, I'm not sure how long ago, quite some time ago now, I think, a bypass route that basically goes between Stanley School on the one end and near Trader Joe's on the other end. This is a really handy route to avoid having to ride on Mount Diablo Boulevard, which is not a very pleasant place to ride your bicycle. And there are signs that show you that it's there, but the signs are pretty difficult to see. If you didn't know to look for them, you probably wouldn't see them. So you might consider taking a look at implementing more noticeable signage on that. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll take note of that. I think you're talking about the Brook Street and Bickerstaff and through there, basically. I will take a look at those signs.
Chair Miller, if I may.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. Speaking of biking, thank you, Mr. Hammond. I wish Orinda and Lafayette had been at the same meeting. That would have been really good at this meeting with BART because it involves all three of you guys. So I used to take BART from out in Brentwood down into downtown Oakland. And one of my thoughts was when the weather's nice, which is great most of the time of the year here, I could get off at Orinda and bike into downtown Oakland. Apparently that's not possible without going through Orinda over to Berkeley and then coming back around into Oakland. Are there plans to have bikeways? Or, I mean, I know you guys are just to the east of Orinda. And so, I mean, maybe East Bay Parks and Orinda and Lafayette, some sort of bike trails that kind of get us over into Oakland. If anybody else knows on here, I just don't know that the trails exist, the bikeways exist.
There are a couple other ways. None of them are easy. It's a huge hill in between. It is actually possible and legal to ride bicycles on 24 between Orinda and the Fish Ranch Road exit. It's a little less nasty than going up over Wildcat Canyon, but it's still pretty hard.
Right. Okay.
And just, we haven't heard any plans from East Bay Parks to put a better facility into Oakland, just so you know, Mr. Howley.
All right.
Not going to bore a sixth tunnel. Bummer. All right. Sorry, couldn't resist the jab. All right. Are there any other comments? I've been really impressed at the specificity of those coming out of Mr. Hammond and Mr. Roseberg, even Mr. Howley, who doesn't reside in the area. But I hope that these comments and observations have been helpful for the city officers themselves to hear, so that they get some suggestions that are actionable and of interest. All right, let's open this for public comment briefly to see if there is anyone. If anyone in the public listening right now would like to comment on this agenda item, please raise your hand or press *9 on your phone. And I do not see any hands going up. So with that, we'll close public comment. And I don't know if Larry and Judd want to Rochambeau, or I'll just maybe say, Mr. Hammond, would you like to perhaps make a motion?
I'll move to accept the report.
All right. So moved. Second from Mr. Rosenberg, I saw. Thank you very much. All right.
Committee Member Ash, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee Member Banker, how do you vote? Committee Member Bristow? Committee Member Halley?
Yes.
Committee Member Hammond?
Approve.
Committee Member Hurley? Committee Member Carr?
Abstaining today, thank you.
Okay. Committee Member Leahy? Committee Member Linder?
Approve.
Committee Member Moriarty?
Approve.
Thank you. Committee Member Powles?
Approve.
Committee Member Vega? Committee Member Yao? Vice Chair Rosenberg?
Approve.
And Chair Miller?
I approve. And I was going to say, I wasn't counting. Do we have a quorum still there?
We do. And the motion passes by majority present.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks to you, those of you in Lafayette, for coming, Ms. Allen and Mr. Moran. We do appreciate the information you provided this evening. Definitely gives us a clear picture of what's going on, and looks like our funds are being put to good use. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right. So we are coming in for the landing, Mr. Carr, since this is your first ride. We're almost to the finish line here, sir. Next item on the agenda is reports, asking if anyone has, did you attend a recent meeting or any of the other committees and would like to report on activities that you observed there? Okay, all right. No summary reports, very good then. Let's see, I'm supposed to ask if there are any public comments on that fact. I'll briefly pause for that. Are there any anyone in the public that wants to comment on this agenda item? I do not see any hands. All right. So next up, any member or staff comments? Mr. Kelly, Ms. Jahan, anything?
One small request to the committee, just as you would when we were in the boardroom, please, I beg of you to log into the meeting 10 to 15 minutes prior to the meeting. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background, and I know no one really used to show up at the dais 5 or 10 minutes prior to starting. Everyone showed up early, and I just ask that you do the same thing. Please consider once the meeting, once we have everyone in the room together, that we are in the boardroom, and and it's easier for me to make sure we have quorum and a couple of other things while we're in there. So I would just appreciate the committee's help with that. I throw myself at your mercy.
And you can just jump in and turn off your camera and, finish your dinner. And I will remind everyone that we're giving you the month of August. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
We're actually going to enjoy it ourselves.
I bet.
The authority does go dark in the month of August with all our normal standing meetings. So.
Is it all of you are European? Are you all going off for holidays?
Yeah, exactly. We're all taking
Okay.
off for the south of France this
Of course.
weekend.
Oh, that makes sense.
Or the living room. But, you know, we will still be in the office. You guys are all more than welcome to email me or give me a call if you need me.
Very good. Very good. Ms. Shahan, just a quick question. I guess this is my one staff comment or sorry, CAC member comment is we've had a couple people join, Mr. Carr and I can't remember her name right now.
William Burkhart?
Yes, yes. So I was just wondering where we go with swearing in and so forth, or has that already been accomplished remotely, et cetera?
That is all done prior to the first meeting.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. All right, and then moving on. So is there anyone in the public who would like to remark about our remarks or any public comment for that? All right.
Matt has twice tonight asked us to be extra nice to people. Other than maybe Ed, have we not been nice to people?
Sorry, they get really nervous and they tell me, I hope they're easy on me. And I'm like, they're an easy crowd. Come on.
Yes.
So, no, I cannot recall a time when you've been hard or too hard. It's good to be hard, you know.
Yeah.
We want you to ask good questions. And you know,
I missed last month's meeting and I didn't know if something happened.
Yeah, there was a big to-do.
No, I mean, I thought Mr. Halley's questions were very cutting to some very important points. So I mean, he asked some important questions in a very politically, you know, or not politically, it's just in a polite way. You know, that's how public discourse should work. He asked important questions, important content, and you know, they weren't necessarily easy questions, but the answers, we need to get answers to these things. So
and I always let staff know that, you know, they can't answer every question asked at them during the meeting, but we do like to follow up on questions that don't get answered for whatever reason. So we will make our best attempt to answer those unanswered questions.
It's also, I mean, sitting in their seat, it's also just an unbelievably, like, if you think about it, there's every concept of city planning and transportation potentially is thrown into the maw of the content for this. And if I were in their shoes, it would be difficult to select down, you know, to choose the exact content that got presented for this format. It might be a little bit daunting because those people, they work their tails off year round. There's quite a bit done that we don't see, even transportation related issues that we don't see, that just because maybe it wasn't Measure J funded or the amount of the funds that were used were not substantial. We just, I'm sure it's difficult for them to editor, you know, bring the editor to that and figure out what to include and what not. A little daunting.
Yeah, and I do in my annual checklist primer that I do for the new member car, I do at the beginning of checklist season, I kind of go over what you're supposed to be looking for, and what the you know, when it's 400 pages, what, you know, 20 pages you should be looking at. And so like the city of Hercules, you saw most of their staff tonight, you know, I mean, it's Mike and their community development director, and there's not a whole lot else, you know, doing those public works planning functions there. So it is a big effort for them just to submit a checklist or to put it together. So
busy.
Yeah, so it varies around the county by jurisdiction, but it is harder for some of those than others. So they do put a lot of effort in.
Yeah. Yeah, we've definitely seen that. All right, any public comments? All right, seeing no hands, I'm closing public comment. And the last item is if there are requests from members about content for future agenda items. Ms. Linder, may I call on you?
Thank you. This is actually more an administrative question, and forgive me if you've already done it, but when is our next meeting since August is vacation?
I think that's on the chair's script.
Oh, gosh. It is September 22nd, 2021. September 22nd.
September
It is on there.
22nd?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Excellent.
We have another hand from committee member Hallie.
Mr. Howley, yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Just two things. One, I've only been here 3 meetings, I think. And one of the questions I had asked about is, can we get information on, I think it's a pilot project with Brentwood, Antioch, and Oakley, some sort of pod car thing. Okay, I just want to make sure I haven't missed that, correct?
Okay.
You haven't missed it, and Fifi might hurt me for saying this, but there may be an opportunity in the coming months to get a tour of their test facility at Momentum Station in Concord.
Wow.
So we can get a presentation on the study itself, and there may be opportunities to see it in real life.
We won't hold you to it, but that.
Hey, I
would
have
be
gotten some of you out to Momentum Station before, so
cool.
I will try again.
Cool. Thank you. And then the other thing was, one, if it's appropriate for this particular body, is an update on Link 21. I don't know if you guys have had that already recently, but just kind of like to know how that's moving and all the kind of key players and stuff like that. So that's it.
Our board was briefed on it, I think 2 months ago, but I'll see if we can get someone to come to this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yes, Mr. Carr.
First thing, I need to know how to raise the hand. I've used Zoom quite a bit, but can't see a raised hand function on my
Your
version.
organic one is fine, although at the bottom of your screen, if you move your mouse around, I believe is it a reaction? No, that's not it.
That's not
it
reactions. I looked there.
It should be under reactions.
Yeah, it
as
should
a
be under
bar.
reactions.
I have clapping hands, a
And a thumbs up.
heart.
So
No.
may I interject, committee member Carr?
Yes, please.
So if you click on reactions and you do see those, a window will pop up and you'll see the hand, a thumbs up, and et cetera, et cetera. Right below it, there's a small bar that they purposefully hide because I kid you not, when they changed it, I couldn't find it. It says raise hand.
Really?
I've heard people say they don't see that though. I think there must be a version.
It is the worst.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. Anyway, not to distract us. One item that is on my mind that I think could be something you could bring as an agenda item on the 17th of July, a Danville resident, Greg Knapp, a coach for the New York Jets, was killed in a bicycle car accident in San Ramon. I know we're really trying hard to go with multimodal streets, but there's clearly safety implications to that, and bringing back an understanding of how we can ensure, as the county progresses these sort of facilities, how we can ensure safety in those designs, because that was quite a tragic incident. He passed last Thursday or Friday. So from those injuries, and that's something that's I think has gotten a lot of attention in this area, and I think something we could perhaps add some value as an advisory committee.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. That's terrible to hear, but so I was planning on in September, hopefully bringing our Vision Zero effort, our countywide Vision Zero effort. And Vision Zero, if you haven't heard of it, is the goal for zero fatalities caused by vehicles. And also member Linder had asked a month or two ago about, in the news, there had been a lot of news about increased rates of collisions, injuries, and fatalities during the shelter in place And so I'm going to try and combine a combination of our Vision Zero and those increased collision rates over the last year and a half into a presentation. So I'm working on that for you.
Okay, that sounds good. And otherwise, perhaps offline, I intentionally abstained today because I want to get a bit better handle on, I don't like being perfunctory. I like adding value and trying to understand as a committee what we're actually voting on in the process of reviewing a very comprehensive plan that's much more than just transportation. And I, with all due respect, can't judge whether extending a left-hand turn lane in Hercules is a good use of funds or not. I trust those hardworking staff to have done their job. So I'm just trying to get the right frame as to how we show up and what we're actually doing when we vote to approve a plan of that sort. And so maybe I'm alone in that. Maybe there's something there that other members could benefit from.
I will send you our PDF of my presentation on what to look for in the checklist, and we can talk about it offline if you have other questions. But we're at the very end of checklist season. I think we have a couple more checklists to do, and then next spring we'll start it all over again, and we'll go over a refresh course of checklist review.
That slide deck or his PDF of the slide deck it's very helpful. It'll give you some context.
That'd be good. I was really worried there was going to be a quiz on Lafayette's 4C32. And if you don't know what I mean by that, go back and look at page 4C32 in Lafayette. And if you could read it, I'm impressed.
We've got some secret words on there. Well, let's see if there are no other suggestions for future content, and I know both barrels are loaded. I know that Matt has got a lot of stuff coming down the pike for us, but then I think we are at a point where a movement to adjourn is in order. So everyone, I am adjourning this meeting at 8:02 p.m. And our next regular meeting, as pointed out by Ms. Jahan, is proposed for September 22nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. And we'll all be there 15 to 20 minutes early for that. All right?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Have a good summer.